Click links to my channel here over at SubStars. So the alleged Mossad honeypot sues Elijah Schaefer of Rift Media on Rumble for defamation. So there are at least a dozen cases that the average Joe should know. And it's funny what you were taught in high school about like Plessy versus Ferguson and Brown versus Board of Education. And the whole world must be viewed through the lens of civil rights in the 60s and Rosa Parks and MLK. And really, out of high school, I look back and I go, what an incredibly biased perspective of what a far left perspective, which is why homeschooling or small private based schools, where you can look back at those issues, and go, the National Guard integrating schools at M1 point, how is that aged? Looks at these schools or covenants running with the land, the constitutional issue that was destroyed in the civil rights era. So what are the consequences of that 60 years later? Oh yeah, it's odd you don't look at these kind of things. So maybe I'll do a video on that, which kind of, in YouTube, you're kind of stuck in certain areas, but I don't know, maybe I'll just do it anyway. So the issue would be, can you call semi-public figures, essentially Israeli whores controlling our government one way or the other, blackmailer, or just simply via the honeypot? And the reality is most likely yes, but there are a lot of factors that go into this because public figures don't get the same degree of protection as private figures do. So defamation is made up of libel or slander, depending on the permanence of the message, which you're probably familiar with from Spider-Man. Defamation per se means that a false statement was so inherently harmful, further proof of harm isn't necessary. Statement would have been likely to cause reputational damage, regardless of the context. And there's like a common law, one of the categories was calling a woman a lady of negotiable affection, or someone not honest in matters of business or their profession, things like moral turpitude, or accusing someone of a loathsome disease. But the standards differ for public figures and matters of public importance, and a lot of people are not aware that the truth is an absolute defense to defamation. So New York Times v. Sullivan was a Supreme Court case in the 60s, and so much of America going off track happened in the 60s, and you were presented with one perspective on it, as if it was just a glowing moment of achievement for America. And you look back and you're like, oh yeah, that was a lie. Everything was a lie. Established the actual malice standard for libel against public officials. The case, Alabama sued New York, civil rights advertisement, MLK actually came up in this. Factual inaccuracies, and the court ruled a public official must prove a defamatory statement was made with knowledge of its falsity or with reckless disregard for the truth to win a libel suit. The decision protected freedom of the press and speech, makes it much harder for public officials to win libel cases, because you're supposed to hold your government accountable, and public officials, agents of the government, need to have thicker skin. And, holding the government accountable under the First Amendment, sometimes you might not be perfect. So Kashyap, or Kashyap Patel, is unconventionally, has an unconventional look to him, and has the personality of oatmeal. The headline here is FBI's director's girlfriend sues podcaster Elijah Schaefer for $5 million over a retweet of an image of them together. And the context was, that she was a Mossad honeypot. And I'm not, of course, saying that because she seems to really want to go after people for the few shekels they have. So the thing is, what happened was people noticed Kashyap's unconventional looks and his much younger honeypot vibe girlfriend, who has a history that glows from orbit. She's a in quotes, country singer, except nobody listens to her. Nobody knows who she is. She's on a playlist, but no clicks. And she was born in the United States, okay, and then she grew up somewhere else, allegedly Europe. So is she actually Israeli, or simply paid by them to control Kashyap? And these are, of course, all just allegations or opinions, not statements of facts, but it's not adding up. And then she can't come back from Europe and moves back to the South to sing country music that no one listens to, but it's part of her persona. So people start joking about the Beauty and the Beast type of pairing, and Elijah Schaefer posts an image of the two of them. The implication, to be fair, being that she's paid by Israel for White House control, which makes a lot of sense when you look, to juxtapose the two in the image. And the obvious issue is, well, Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein, of course, allegedly deleted himself in a prison by hanging, and his partner Brunel in a French prison. Actually, it's kind of weird because the exact same thing happened. Strange, isn't it? That kind of shows you that there's a shadow government, where there's a government that's more powerful than the government because they can go around the government to remove people who get in the way. So it kind of feels like, someone else, some other group is controlling the White House. And it might explain some of Trump's strange recent globalist decisions. It indicates that other forces, like Israel perhaps, might be controlling him, or he's just a globalist himself who decided to come out of the closet a little bit in the second term. 600,000 more Chinese students need to come to American universities. Like, well, we have our own Americans who can fill those university spaces. Or Laura Ingraham on the interview. That's another video, but that was a real mask off moment for Trump when he said he needs to bring in talented people because they're not the talented people in America, which is weird because you look at America for most of its history up until the Hart-Celler Act in the mid-'60s, and it was, everything was built, 99% of the stuff done in America was built by, people of European descent. And there were very few Chinese. There might have been a few on the railroads in the West Coast. Almost no Indians. You get the idea. It was, it's weird. All this great infrastructure was created from the mind of European people. So the argument is not quite making sense, especially when you look at what they did in World War II to tool up to build the massive shipbuilding effort, military effort that they had. A lot of women were being trained in. So anyway, her efforts it's gaslighting, and like a lot of Trump fans out there, and nobody wants to have to change their position on something. But when they tell you who they are, you got to believe them, and it's like you're following a movement, not a person, not a cult of personality. So her efforts to stop, and J.D. Vance is not any better, unfortunately. So her efforts to stop rumors about her with Mr. Patel is to try to shut down other people noticing that she seems like an Israeli honeypot to possibly blackmail and control Kashyap. But going after Elijah is kind of just bringing attention to the situation. Even her court filing, which is available online, notices how focused on Israel Riff Media's Elijah Schaefer's company is, which is a logical thing that more mainstream media should be focused on. That's why alt media is doing so well, because they're asking the questions that the mainstream media just seems afraid for some reason to ask. Odd. So what happened to the Epstein list, for example? I mean, there's so many things. Was it Dan Bongino, Kashyap, Patel, and who was that woman? I forget the other woman. Who were talking about, it's on our desk and the horrible things. And okay, so what happened to releasing it? Oh, changed their mind on that. So freeze the government. No money for the poor or internal infrastructure, but there's money for Israel. It's weird how everyone in office except for like a handful of AOC types are the only ones who are holding out on that. Anyway, so Trump changed his mind on that, and it kind of seems like we have a control group of politicians because it just seems like an obvious conclusion. I'm sure this guy's such a Chad that he regularly, of course, pulls this kind of, sure, totally believable. Him and his cowboy boots to bring him up to a respectable, short king's height, of course. It's okay to ask questions about the influences on the government. So the left released some Epstein files. But the dirty thing they did was they redacted the name of the woman who said Trump wasn't involved with this kind of stuff. Her name was Virginia Gillifarni or something like this. I think she's recently passed, actually. But she gave a few interviews that are hard to find, but they're out there. I think I put them on my other platforms. She didn't have a whole lot of good things to say about Epstein, Maxwell, and Brunel, and actually I think Weinstein was tied in there too, as well as Dershowitz, alleged involvement in the situation. They were kind of a supremacist group of people. But a lot of things, how the media presents information is how it crafts a narrative. And I will say the white pill is alternative media over the past 10 to 15 years. But it's like the rise of alternative media and alternative platforms has been really, and then the ways to monetize it, like SubScribeStar and Buy Me a Coffee and all these kind of alternative platforms, because people who talk about that kind of thing are just not going to get they're not going to get advertising revenue. So it's a weird thing where people are kind of noticing here there be dragons and a blank spots on the map that some people once they start shining a light on they get demonetized on YouTube or kicked off platforms or lose their banking accounts and such things. Anyway, so they redacted the name of the woman because they wanted to craft a narrative with an implication, but anyone who's familiar with the Epstein situation knows, this is this woman who was in various other interviews, including video where she's talking about that Trump wasn't involved in the situation, but they redacted her name to make it seem like, this is a new accuser coming forward. But anyone could look at that and goes, this is the woman that was in the news recently. Everyone knows who she is. There's no need to redact it. And someone was saying it's like that really should be criminal behavior from the politicians to craft a narrative, lie by omission like that. And Jasmine Crockett, she knew this because she's familiar with the case, as everyone is, and she dodged the question on CNN. But at least CNN asked the question, which is interesting. And, a government this far gone is probably not going to be fixed through conventional means at the ballot box. And that doesn't mean unconstitutional activity, glow for murder, or anything like that. It just means unconventional political machinations. Because if you do the same things, you're going to get the same result. You got to do things a little bit differently. A more active participation to advocate for the interests of your group is something that has not been done before. Anyway, totally organic country music singer who might have been born in the South but lived her whole life in Europe, allegedly, and then comes back to the South to, a little bit odd. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys all next episode.